of skill level, in terms of being an MC to the culture, and who had the greater impact on this art form? Who's the better MC, Slanks? Is it Talib Kweli or is it Big Boy?
So I actually had a harder time examining this from a rhymologic standpoint than I originally thought I would at first glance of those two sitting on the line together next to each other with the V and the S in the middle. I was like, my gut and my personal hip hop sensibilities and even somewhat biased East Coast fanmanship is quick to say Talib Kweli, but it's a lot closer than some backpack aficionados or lyricism enthusiasts might say. Hear me out. Both of their styles, though from different regions and even different areas, because Outkast predates Black Star and Talib by just a bit. They're very similar styles, though. Both really carry a mastermanship of the staccato delivery, putting certain words together in multisyllabic ways, using smaller words to expand how a bar sounds even bigger vocabulary-wise. All that to say, yeah, it's much closer, and it's weird. The comparison is kind of where it's opposite is that you have Talib, who comes from a group, quote unquote, that really only had one album, and so most of people's consumption of Talib's style and his abilities is through the lens of him as a solo MC, where Outkast is predominantly what Big Boy is known for, and most people's consumption of his skills and styles is from the lens of him being in a group. And both of them, you could say this debate is almost like the king of the lyrical sidekicks, because both of them are always kind of looked at through the lens of being in the shadow of what is viewed as their more lyrically skilled counterpart. Like both Dre 3000 and Yasin Bey, aka Mos Def, cast a giant shadow, or looked at as like lyrical giants. And then they have these really skilled people that they have worked with in Talib and Big Boy, who can be kind of looked at as like, oh yeah, they're really dope too, but not as good as the guy they rhyme with a lot. Where Talib is a little bit more respected lyrically on his own than maybe Big Boy is, but because of the one being mostly known for being in a group. But hear me out. If you really look at the Big Boy solo albums, especially the one that came out around like 2010, 2011, that had the Jitterbug joint on it. Big Boy has always gone really hard and really ham and really been excellent in every verse I've heard him on. And his solo albums, he really extended on that. Starting with Speakerbox, he really
okay. So let me
that.
interject for just a second. I can't disagree with you in that this is a much closer matchup than some people would have it. I do think that there are sidekicks compared to the guys that they're in a group with, but I don't think that it's as far-fetched to say that they're closer even to their group mates than some people would agree upon. I think Mos Def and Andre 3000 are so unique in the way that they deliver, and so unique in the way that they think mentally. That's more so what's outshining Talib and Big Boy more than just what they come with in terms of just pure lyrical skill. Because I think Talib Kweli is phenomenal lyricist, and Big Boy is someone over the years who has really developed, as you say, to be a great artist. I mean, I've heard several of his solo albums, and I was impressed. And initially, before that, I didn't really think much of it because I was so into 3000 that Big Boy was just like, he came in, he was Little C's for me, and some of that was my East Coast bias playing a factor. But as time has gone on, I guess that's a little harsh, but as time has gone on,
hear me out, specifically to that point in that era, because it was like the late '90s, and I would cite this as lyrical example of how good Big Boy has always been. His verse on the song with Missy Elliott, that he featured on around like 98, 99 was crazy. I remember people were like, yo, did you hear that Big Boy verse on that Missy Elliott song? And so like, it's like that once every time he's had a chance to kind of like get out of the shadow of the sun that is Dre 3000,
Right.
he's shown that like he shines just as bright as well.
Exactly. So I'm gonna say this about, if I had to pick one, as much as I've grown to really like Big Boy, and also the amount of part of being an MC is the style that you present and represent, the swagger that you have. He's had his own thing. Him and Dre have been so different stylistically, not just in rhyme but in appearance and wardrobe. As great as I think Big Boy is, if I had to choose one, I still have to go Talib Kweli, because I feel like overall Talib Kweli's albums were more impactful. I feel like Kweli has at least 2 classic albums. There was the Reflection Eternal Joint Train of Thought that was in 99, 2000. When did it come out? Around that time, 98, around that time period, that I still have to listen to today, that just really showed his the vastness of his ability and the amount of topics that he could speak on. And then also 2000. It was unbelievable record that holds up to the day. And then he had quality and some good records with great singles, but big singles. But another classic album that I felt came out, I believe 2008, which was Eardrum. Eardrum was one of the best albums I heard in the 2000s in that time period, and it told me everything that I needed to know about Talib Kweli, in addition to the massive singles that he had at Just to Get By, which is like a conscious anthem that everybody could sing along to. And as an MC, you know how hard it is to take conscious music and to make it popular music. Kendrick Lamar does that very well in this time period, but Talib Kweli, he mastered that at the time period in the 2000s when he was in his prime. So if I had to me, you know, you'll get to know that classic albums to me are like championship rings for athletes. You could be a great player, but if you don't have a championship ring, I gotta rank the guy who's earned and won the rings above you. And so I have to go with Talib Kweli in this conversation.
Okay, so I have to say that I fall on the same side. I land on the same place in terms of, I would say Kweli by a little bit less, by less than I would originally think that I would have said. And I agree that Reflection Eternal and Eardrum are definitely classics. But what I think is interesting too, that also weighs into that conclusion, is that Talib's cultural impact as a solo artist has been really big. Like Talib he kind of made like independent cool in a way, and like underground, like pseudo mainstream in a way, and that he made it cool to be like, yeah, I'm not wearing a lot of bling. I'm kind of like rocking some Afrocentric wear maybe.
He even had an impact on me. When I saw him live, I started turning my hat to the side of my eye like that when I was rhyming. That comes from Kweli.
Word, yeah. And so like, and then with Kweli TV, like how that's become such a massive platform. Originally just started with him promoting him and his artists, and now it's like a platform for just like Black culture. My daughter showed me like this amazing little like mini movie of a Black superhero based off of like African deity that was like pretty good, and it was just like on Kweli TV, like just like putting dope Black stuff on this platform for a long time now. And so like the cultural impact is really big as well. But in relation to your championship analogy, which is great of an analogy as it is, but I must say this, strictly to that point, I must simply say, are you serious? Now,
I'm dead serious.
Big Boy, if that's the factoring thing for you, or one of the factoring things to your conclusion here, Big Boy's got multiple championship rings on the Outkast team.
When we're talking about them as individual MCs, Slankster, we're not talking about.
We are.
If we were talking about Black Star versus Outkast, then you would have an argument.
That's not
but
fair.
You can't possibly be
Black
serious.
Star is an expansion team that only had one season. Where Outkast is the 60s Cleveland Browns, if you will, like at least 4 championships. But see here, but I'm saying though, if you bring the ring analogy into things, you can't ignore the work that Big Boy did with the Outkast platform, because those albums aren't Outkast albums without him. and several of them are not classics without him.
Okay, that's a fair. That's a
So
fair
if
point.
you're gonna say rings, like technically speaking, Big Boy, I would say has more hip hop album rings.
Well, Talib Kweli has more rings with him being at the helm of the situation and not a sidekick. Big Boy was basically Horace Grant to RG3000's Michael Jordan.
If you don't have Horace Grant, if you don't have Dennis Rodman, you don't have the same
You
amount
don't win.
of rings.
But at the same time, you're not the driving force, the driving factor to leading to you getting to the finals and winning those championships.
So then the question is, are you considering rings, or are you considering rings worn by the driving factor? Because
I think it plays.
John Sally, Robert Horry, they've got just as many rings as anybody.
They've got rings, but they want the driving force behind those teams winning it. They want the number one or the number two option, or the guys that were really pushing the engine along. Right. They want the leaders of the team. So you can collect rings.
Isn't necessarily rings alone.
It's never been rings alone. It's never been rings alone. It's everything that goes on to your ability and skill level. But if you have classic albums, it's gonna set you apart because it shows what you can do.
Are you discrediting the rings, the silver rings, if you will, worn by, say, a U-God or a Master Killer? They were a part of the team that won those rings.
Well, as someone who's seen Wu-Tang live a few times, we didn't need them to be there. So we didn't need them to be there.
Are you serious?
Today as what I was when I was born, a black man.
Your racism bounces off me, I'm bulletproof. Your prejudice gets deflected, I'm bulletproof. Your hatred can't penetrate me, I'm bulletproof. My mind's